So, hi, everybody. Welcome to this amazing panel that's going to give a little insight to esports, economics, and the ecosystems regarding this amazing industry, I guess. My name is Heather Blair. I've got a multifaceted entrepreneur. So my world comes from the cinema space and now in esports and gaming. And I'm actually bridging these two worlds together because our dear cinemas are really struggling with their business model. I do host a lot of events for a nonprofit that I have called Women in Exhibition. I also have a company called the Cinema Esports Alliance Corporation, where I help the communication between these worlds. And I am producing an event that'll bring motorsports and esports together under the cinema banner in Q2 of next year. This esteemed panel that I have are all super duper experts in this field. So it's my pleasure and honor to introduce them all. And since we have a lady in our group, let's do ladies first. Amanda, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about kind of your journey to where you're at right now and give us a deep dive on kind of where you sit right now.
Totally. Yes, Heather, thank you so much. Super, super happy to be here. I'm Amanda Solomon. I am currently the CEO of Tyrus. We are a talent management agency in the gaming and influencer space. And I was also just granted the position of Chief Revenue Officer for Women in Games International, which is a 501c3 nonprofit geared towards making gaming, esports, tabletop, video games, all significantly more inclusive for women, non-binary individuals, and femme-presenting people. My journey really came abruptly. I could say I've been in gaming personally for 15 years. I've played World of Warcraft since the dawn of time, and I always worked in very corporate settings. I come from very corporate B2B software sales. Got 2 bachelor's degrees, got an MBA, and I'm like, we're going to stay on this corporate track and have our, situation in gaming where we play with our friends and we go to some fun conventions and that's where we leave it. And I remember a few years ago, I just got to a point where I'm like, this is no longer fun. I'm 25, 26 years old, and I'm already exhausted from the absolute gut-wrenching work that I'm doing, being, a very corporate salesperson. And it really just wasn't for me. So I very quickly started on the agency side of gaming out here in Los Angeles, and really quickly rose through that, started my own agency as well. And now I've helped build and create several other agencies in that kind of at that same time, because you never have enough free time. I joined Misfits Gaming Group and helped lead their influencer marketing initiatives. And so really got some very interesting hands-on experience understanding how esports intersects with the agency work I was doing and how these brand deals really coexist in, gaming as a whole. And that kind of propelled me into the position I am now, where I'm, running an agency. We have 20 some odd employees. Our roster is pretty large. I represent esports talent as well at that agency. And now with Women in Games International, I have the pleasure of doing some really amazing nonprofit work in all different types of gaming. We have a big focus on esports, which is so incredible. And yeah, that's really my journey.
Oh, that's so awesome. And of course, I'm going to make a couple of notes because they'll really apply to as we delve down in our conversation. Well, next up on my computer screen is the amazing Neil Johnson. So Neil, also please tell us a little bit about yourself, introduce you and your company, and kind of what your journey to where you're at right now, please.
Gotcha. Hey, Heather, thanks for the introduction, and thanks to Malcolm and Stephen for inviting me to be a part of this show. I reside here in Washington, D.C., and you guys are our neighbors to the north. So anything that I can do to help, whether it's now or in the future, you guys can count on me. My name is Neil Johnson. I am the director of esports for Events DC here, located in the nation's capital. Events DC, a little background on us. We are the official convention and sports arm, the sports authority for the nation's capital. Our job our task is to bring conventions, meetings, associations, summits, what have you, to all of our venues here in the district, as well as those that we don't own in the city. In addition to just traditional conventions and meetings, we also bring entertainment events, concerts, what have you, sporting events. And now we are kind of diversifying our portfolio and looking at gaming and esports. Here, we own and operate 11 venues. Just to give you a little background, a little context, we own and operate the convention center itself, which is 2.4 million square feet. We own and operate RFK Stadium, which used to be the home of where the Washington football team used to play. It's now a mixed use facility right now. We own and operate the entertainment and sports arena. ESA, it's about a 4,200 person arena located in Ward 8 here in Washington, D.C. That is the home of the Washington Mystics of the WNBA. It is the home of the DC Go-Go, Capital City Go-Go for the NBA D-League. And it is the practice facility for the Washington Wizards of the NBA. Here, my task is pretty much all things esports. It's evaluating partnerships and relationships. It is trying to stand the local community up and have it, transfer from a regional hub to a national hub to an international destination, if you will. I'm also tasked with just trying to secure live events, try to bring esports and gaming events to our 11 venues as well as a district. And my journey, let's see. I traditionally was conventions and meetings. So I worked for the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority. I worked for the Los Angeles Tourism and Convention Board. And before that, I was traditional stick and ball. I worked for Disney, Anaheim Sports Incorporated. We were the parent company that managed and operated and owned Disney's Mighty Ducks of Anaheim and National Hockey League, and Anaheim Angels, which are now the Los Angeles Angels for Major League Baseball. And in that capacity, Disney had also owned ESPN. So I moved to Las Vegas, worked for ESPN, and sold UNLV Athletics for a little bit. One of the main sponsors there was a Convention and Visitors Bureau in Las Vegas. So I went over there as a junior sales exec, handled the West Coast. And then in 2016, moved around a bunch of different places, but in 2016, MGM Resorts came calling, asking me to kind of handle sports and particular esports. And so with them, MGM Grand, we are MGM Resorts or MGM Grand, Bellagio, Aria, all those kind of Luxor. And there, I went to a MLG Call of Duty Open in my first esports event in Orlando. And I walked across the street with one of the main players from FaZe Clan Attach, and unassuming, good-looking kid. And I'm walking across the streets talking like, hey, man, you've been to this? And he's very cool. He's answering every question I've got. I get there. He gets mic'd up, he gets suited up, sits down on his computer, and he's like the main guy that's tearing into everybody on the stage. And I'm like, wow, this dude just like, he's like the main guy. He's over here talking to me like nobody's business. And I was there for, I think, 10 hours. I didn't leave except to go to the bathroom. I didn't eat. I was looking at my watch. I either eat now or I sit here and stay, but now the best teams are playing each other. I can't leave now. And that was my introduction into this space. And I was like, if you can sit here and deny eating and not leave this joint and be like attached to your chair, then this is something that I don't know what you've got a hold of right now. You might have a tiger by the tail, but this is something that I really want to pay attention to. It's something that I may potentially want my life's focus to revolve around. And that's where I kind of am right now. My last couple of jobs have been, 100% esports and gaming. And that's where I'm at. And I love it.
Oh, that's such a brilliant story. I love it. You guys are all rock stars. Okay. And then, and of course, this is awesome because there's so much I'm taking notes on. And Danny, your story is also great. So please introduce yourself. Tell us about your company right now and then your journey to get to Exposure, please.
For sure. Definitely. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Especially the guys at FFG. It's pretty awesome to be able to see you guys actively engaging with the community and providing opportunity. So that's first off. My name, again, is Danny Martin. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Exposure, Inc. We are ed tech platform or ecosystem that's derived with the technology platform that provides educational opportunities to individuals in the form of programs, field trips, and also events. We own a 8,000 square foot esports facility in Duncanville, Texas, which is about 20 minutes south of Dallas. So ultimately, we leverage this facility to allow the community, parents, students, individuals who are aspiring gamers to come into the facility, actually compete. We leverage 2,500 of that square feet as a arena where we have a stage with about 10 PCs that have 3090s, GTXs, and Ryzen 9s processors, and about 150 capacity from a spectator perspective. And we leverage the rest of the building as an office space as we're ed tech platform. So we have a learning management system that we engage with actual schools all across the world, and they log into our platform and learn management, marketing, technology, competition, and production. So the rest of the actual facility is used for our events coordination team, our marketing team, our dev team, our content team, our production team. So actively allowing the community to see that there's an esports organization that's in their backyard, and they can actively see that there are careers inside of the actual entity outside of just that of professional gaming. So we really advocate for the careers that are in this space that are actively being needed to be fulfilled by esports organizations that of armed forces. You have the Army, Marines, USO, you have college that are offering scholarships, and you have non-endemic and endemic entities that are actively looking at providing jobs and providing internships to individuals. And so for us, we're just an advocate for providing opportunities to individuals specifically and communities all around the globe. Journey for me is I've just, in college, I was the one that was fixing consoles, running tournaments, and just recognized that a tournament organizer is critical to this space. That tournament organizer, they engage with everybody. They are the market, they engage with the marketers, they engage with the competitors. They put every single thing together. And I looked at as this is a great opportunity to help other tournament organizers fulfill that of spaces. It's great, when we see the large esports stadiums, but before you can fill a large esports stadium, it starts with the grassroots small space, whether that's in the basement, whether it's in a small or a small convention center. It's about that. And then individuals, as they grow, they can actually fill those actual esports stadiums that are out there, which is really, really cool. Because when you go to an esports stadium event, the energy, the crowd, the atmosphere is just awe-inspiring. So we have to develop those individuals to get to that point. And that's a huge focal point for me. So I did that in college and actively came back to my hometown and started building out facilities to allow individuals to run their tournaments out of the small spaces. So therefore, they can actually develop the skills and, most importantly, develop the portfolio enough for them to go out and secure larger facilities in order to showcase their talent. So for me, I'm in the esports industry and gaming industry from a tech perspective. And I look at being able to provide jobs and opportunities for the individuals to keep this industry growing.
It's really interesting how different each of you kind of all in your skill sets. But would you guys agree that for somebody to learn how to be a tournament organizer, they should probably start them at maybe 19, learning how to put a bunch of cats in a room and herd the cats?
Most definitely.
So since you all are so varied in your expertise, Amanda, let me ask you a little bit about, as you've taken your expertise with all your background and your education, what is the most all what you've learned that's brought you to today in understanding how we take this esports and gaming world and make it make sense and make it make money? Because I think at the end of the day, everyone thinks it's really sexy, but it's the make the money part that I see as the big question. Where do you think that you can take your prior application and bring it to somebody and say, I can help you make money?
Absolutely. I mean, for me personally, my education is all around business. With marketing degrees, accounting degrees, and MBA. I'm working on an entertainment law degree. I think that's kind of like a almost little like perfect box I get to hand to people or companies or anyone that I work with. I feel that those skills really easily translate into actionable items to make money. If you're in a business, you don't know how to manage your books, you don't have that accounting information, you're not going to be in a place where you're really making money and understanding what's going on. I mean, like that's
it's a big loaded question, isn't it? Have you been able to walk somebody off the ledge that has all these great ideas and help them kind of build a business plan and say, this is what you have to do. These are the actionable items to help you monetize, instead of just everybody sees these big numbers they read on Newzoo or some news channel, right? And I'm sure you all can attest to that. It's like, and everybody's running and they're pulling their cash register. And like Danny said, you gotta work in a small room to go to the next size room to fill out a stadium. I figure in from the world that you come from, helping somebody take a step back and say, can you do this and have it produce positive results?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I would say in that regard, absolutely. But there are also many times that I have to also explain how a business model needs to operate in order to make money. Like as I'm building Tyrus, like you go from a company that is not making money to getting closer to the green and making money. And then depending on the decisions you make, that can impact that. So, you know, companies were like, oh my God, that huge company has to be making money. A lot of times they are not. And to really understand that, I think that's something that really hit me in the last year. I've never been a CEO before in this capacity where I'm working with a large amount of revenue and having to really understand and really taking that experience and helping others that are, you know, trying to do the same thing. I think one really important thing is realizing that you cannot solve all the problems. Pick one thing you want to do, start with that one thing, and then you get to branch into what I call, and I think it's very like traditional school talk, but like different verticals. So like you have your core business, and I know, Danny, you're so familiar with this. I see you shaking your head. Yes. Pick that core competency. What are you as your business?
What's your lane?
What do you want to be good at? What do you really want to be good at? Get really good at that one thing, and then you branch off. Because what I've personally done at Tyrus, and my staff can attest, we tried to add a vertical too soon, and you got to pull it back because you're wasting money, you're wasting time, and you're going to put out a product or a service that is not up to par with what I assume most people would like, and that's perfection.
And do you tell people, number one, to be patient? Number two, they need to test?
Patient? No, because I'm not patient.
Oh, okay. All right.
I want it done yesterday.
Okay.
But it takes persistence, I think. Okay. So patience is definitely a word to describe it, but just being persistent and I think resilient when it's not working. Yeah. And to just keep reworking it. Kind of like Play-Doh is what I tell people. Just keep working it until it's something that you're like, that's it. That's what's going to work. That makes sense.
Okay, great. So Neil, since you have been the convention guy, I can imagine that trying to get a big city, a larger entity that has a bunch of people that say, this is just the way it's done, and have them open their mind and try something new would be a little bit like drinking water out of a fire hydrant. How do you get some of these bigger entities that are that want to break into this space and they have all these ideas? How do you get to them, wrangle them in to listen to you and take that, like she's saying, that first step into trying some sort of activation in a community?
I think for us, it's a little bit easier in that our president and CEO right off the jump acknowledge the importance of esports and gaming. You know, we're trying to bring in traditional conventions and meetings, traditional stick and ball, live events, and this is just the extension of those next markets that can sit down here and kind of bring something in. So it's a natural to kind of look into, you know, new revenue streams. So I think our president CEO, you know, was able to sit here and see, you know, the wave, the phenomenon of gaming and esports as it was coming on the horizon. Also, our board chair used to work for an esports organization. So it really wasn't a lot in terms of convincing leadership, you know, to jump into this foray, because I think a little bit in any successful business, I think, you know, maybe 80%, you know, you have to kind of stick to the core of who you are. But I think there should always be 20% of trying to sit here and see what's new, what's coming around the corner. And I think, you know, with every, you know, business, I think you're trying to look at that in terms of other things and other stakeholders, you know, and our stakeholders are other internal departments. They're vendors that we work with. We have a sister organization, Destination DC. We've got a whole bunch of hotels that are kind of like, hey, what is this new business that you're looking at? Yeah. And I think from that point, that standpoint, it's a lot of education. It's a lot of, you know, like, hey, you know, this is what esports is, you know, it's kind of growing, it's competitive video games. It's not that far off from like, you know, this market segment, you know, okay, traditionally, we have been going after pharmaceutical meetings and conventions. Yep. This is what's unique to the pharmaceutical market. You know, you have to have, you know, they have to be very strict. You have to sign a lot of confidentiality agreements. They're bringing out new drugs before the market kind of knows what's going on. Everybody has to be tight-lipped. You know, you can't really put the names. You can't publish them out in like, you know, company websites. And these are the things that are specific to this segment. Well, then you have to sit here and educate them. These are the things that are specific to this segment. You know, some of the things is that people that are in the space that are bringing, you know, events and meetings to your destination, they don't completely capture the total economic footprint. What they'll do is that they will block a room for the competitors and then for staff, but they're not blocking the rooms for all the attendees, so you have to let them know that, what you see on paper, there's more behind that. You also have to let them know that what you see physically in the arena or venue is more than that, because 85% of what's going on is being streamed outside of the building.
Yep.
You have to let them know that this is a digital tech first, industry. So what we're charging, for Encore and AV and stuff like that, we may need to revise for this market because they're tech savvy. They know what this costs. They know what that costs. We may have to even introduce a specific rate for these guys. You have to sit here and understand that they're very big on union labor. Can they do stuff on their own? How much of union labor do you have to have? So you have to kind of talk to, some of your unions and kind of see what's going on, or what's the bare bones that they can kind of exist where you satisfy the union requirements, but they satisfy the need to drive costs down. So you're kind of doing all of that, all of this pushing and pulling and kind of letting people know. And I think the interesting thing is that, this is relatively new. I started in 2016 at MGM, and we had just booked EVO, the Fighting Game Championships in Mandalay Bay. Yeah. It was just on ESPN, and a lot of people were like, hey, what is this? I'm like,
what are we watching here?
Do we have confirmed history? I'm like, no, it's kind of new. We're trying to look at it, so you have to kind of explain people, but after a while,
expectation a little bit.
After a while, everybody kind of got it. Now, and it grew. And now, in addition to kind of, I think when I left MGM, EVO was bringing in 14,000 people, on average a year. It was taken up. It was in the convention halls in Mandalay Bay, and then it went to the Mandalay Bay Event Center for their finals. And so it just grew. You start to see people just in the meeting space. Now they're all over the casino floor doing this, that, and the third. So it grew. So a lot of it is education. But I do want to take a minute to kind of jump back into the question that you kind of asked Amanda, because if we all knew the answer, then we would all just quit our jobs, and when somebody would sit here and just ask us to build, some a new kind of entity. I think one of the things you have to let people know, in order to make money, you have to be in this for the long haul. I don't think you're just going to come right in, and just right off the bat,
you're not going to put your $2 in and get your $3.
Yeah, no, exactly. You have to be in this for the long haul. The community has to know who you are. They have to get a feel for you. They have to see you a couple of times, not just once. You have to kind of build the relationships, because we all know everything is driven by relationships and who you want to work with. And relationships don't just happen overnight. I think one of the things is I think everybody on here could understand that the people right now in this current day and form, the people who are making money are the game developers. That's where the money is. If you sit down here,
it's all marketing for them, right?
If you sit here and look at like the Esports Observer Insider, and you sit here and see the quarterly profits, there are like millions. So the game developers are making a lot of money. Now, the esports orgs, there's only a couple of them who are operating in the black. Some of them are operating in the red, and they're diversifying their streams to be more of a entertainment company and getting into gaming, as opposed to just strict esports. Esports is just the top tier of competitive
small
gaming,
percentage.
And so they're diving in and embracing what is the rest of this ecosystem, and that's gaming. And then I would say there's the revenue sources out there. It's media rights, live events, ticket sales, merchandise sales, in-game purchases, sponsorships, and advertising. And my role in my lane, live events, that's where we get the help, move the needle and affect the bottom line, is hosting live events, which leads to ticket sales, which leads to in-venue merchandise. But we are also a sponsor, and advertise as well. So we're not just, hosting events. We're trying to affect the ecosystem by sponsoring teams and stuff like that as well. So I just kind of wanted to jump into that.
Awesome. What a great amount of information. You guys are great. Okay, Danny, one of the questions that they wanted me to ask in this presentation was to say, what are some of the ways that cities can encourage local esports and community growth? And it really does line itself. It's a perfect question to ask you.
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest way is to involve the stakeholders in the actual city. So one of the things that we did in our space is when we built our esports facility, we built it in a hub of around about 7 ISDs. And before we can even offer a product to those ISDs, we actively had to go to the actual mayors. So we actively allowed all the mayors in the cities, about 7 mayors, Dallas, Duncanville, Cedar Hill, DeSoto, Lancaster. These mayors were able to come into our facility and actively interact with the actual event. Like we put a Rocket League tournament together and allowed them to compete on the stage against the cities. And that gave them the perspective of understanding what esports looks like. And then from there, their eyes and ears were open to say, okay, well, now we're ready to hear. We see why someone would be entertained by this. Now let's see what the economics look like. And so from that perspective, now they have the opportunity to say, okay, would an event bring in individuals to our city? And would it equate to that of hotels being booked? And would it equate to that of restaurants being at? And so in this instance, once you can be able to prove that, then it becomes we're going to stamp this. And then now let's go ahead and start to reach out to the superintendents of the schools. And let's start to educate the actual individuals, because now another big opportunity is how many students are actively going to college and who are becoming actually great citizens. Is gaming something that is keeping kids off the street? Is it helping our actual PD department and our fire department? Is it making their jobs easier? And so ultimately, when you think about it, you got to think about everything outside of just the fun element. It's really looking at it from a perspective of how can it impact your city financially and also from a safety perspective. I come from an area, specifically this area, which it's, just frankly, it's low economic, So for me, I look at it as an opportunity to give back to my city by bringing what I know and my knowledge into this space, and then being able to say, hey, this is a place where other people from around the world can fly to and engage and have fun just as much, where they don't have to be scared to come to our backyard. And that's one of the biggest focal points where I will go to college and I will say I'm from Oak Cliff, and people will be like, what? Like, all right, you're here, and I'm like, I don't want people to be afraid to come to my city. And so bringing esports has been a great way for us to be able to showcase the fun and the elements. And I think that's really big, because the cities need to know also, like I stated, that, some really good talent come from this, from esports and gaming. I mean, like right now, Neil is on the call, and Neil in Washington, there is the Washington Wizards gaming team, the Washington Wizards DG. They've, for NBA 2K League, they've actively won back-to-back championships for the NBA 2K League. And they have an individual on their team by the name of Dave Fry, who's last year won the actual championship and MVP. And a lot of people do not know, but Dave Fry literally got his start from exposure. And it was when he was in his home, and he would actively come to my facility and compete in real time, when we were allowing other individuals to come out and compete in a live setting. And because he had that live setting element where nobody else had it, he was able to compete, collaborate, understand how to work under pressure. And, when he went to, Washington Wizards, he was equipped. He knew all elements. Granted, he's good at the game. I've seen it before the NBA 2K League was even announced. And to see how he's actually become a really good teammate and leader and represent the Washington Wizards DG is awesome. So now, like when Dave Fry comes back and he comes to our facility and he talks to the kids, and I take him and he gets to speak to these kids that come to the city, I literally say, hey, you can be the next Dave Fry. And we have over 8 gamers that have turned pro out of our organization, literally like 6 of them in the NBA 2K League right now that is still in the NBA 2K League, and they represent multiple teams. And so for us, when I go to schools, I can literally tell the actual schools, like, you're not too far from being a Dave Fry or a Reezy or a J Money or anybody that else from an NBA 2K or even Rocket League or any other game title. You're not that far from it. So when individuals can see that it's possible, and also say, man, I can learn Photoshop or graphic design, and I can be able to create videos from editing, like that showcases the city that it's possible. And that's when you get the support. And it's not just, it then not becomes just money. It comes about how can we actually be a city that one would want to come from and do some great things inside of the world.
And I would just really just to kind of dovetail on what Danny said, and it's amazing what they're doing out there. And I didn't know you had 8 professionals coming out of there. I knew you had Dave Fry, but I didn't know you had 8 professionals. But one of the things that, Danny just kind of finished with is so important, is that it's not just about money. From a city perspective,
Involvement, yeah.
yeah, anytime, esports and gaming stands up, when you have areas that have a proliferation of colleges and universities. We have 25 colleges and universities in DC Metro. You throw in, Virginia and Maryland and DMV, as we affectionately call it. You have 125 colleges and universities in that area. So one of the things that that happens is that now you're really starting to stand up STEM communities, and what our mayor wants to lean into is the technology and STEM related opportunities here, because you have so many graduates. I think the area is pretty. I think we've got some 90,000 tech jobs alone available here, so I mean, we really have to be progressively funneling people into areas that will take care of these job shortages. And so esports does that. So it's not just about money, it's about standing your area up, it's about the local workforce, it's about pushing people into some of these areas, to maintain a regional identity in terms of how the country and internationally you're seen. So there's a lot more than just the money to that, and cities deal with the political and all of those different aspects like all the time.
Yeah.
Awesome. So Amanda, this is probably a good question for you. How can a business engage with their local esports community?
That is such a great question. I feel highly unqualified to answer that after.
But you work with brands, so you probably, I mean, a brand is a business in a local community.
Totally. Not truthfully, not on a local level. I'm actually very unfamiliar
local
with it. Yeah, I typically do a bit more like nationwide and a lot of international stuff as well. But I know Danny can absolutely.
Danny can answer that question.
Yeah, I can definitely help.
Lob it over to Danny.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest focal points right now is a lot of schools reach out to us like, hey, how can we actually build an esports club or esports program into our actual local schools? And a lot of the insight that I provide them is actually breaking up the students into sections: in management, marketing, technology, competition, and production. Well, the production side, which involves your producers, your technical directors, your broadcast technicians, your moderators, your graphic designers, that's typically the way for you to be able to shine light on the events that are happening inside of your actual schools. And typically when you do production, you can actually build out a production that incorporates commercials. You can build out an actual production that has ads and logos. And so your local businesses that are in an area, your local Subways, your local McDonald's, your local banks, your local insurance companies, these are the entities that are actively looking at getting their brand out to be able to sell their services to individuals. So local entities right now, like an institution, high school or organization that are looking to fundraise or to be able to look at to bring in sponsors. Yes, as a company like us and so many others, we go out and search for, $20,000, $40,000, $100,000, $200,000 sponsorships, but a school can actively go and obtain $100 sponsorship or a $200 sponsorship and get 10 of those. And then they can actively add value for that business, even to the perspective of leveraging production to be able to give coupons for discounts on items to their particular business services. And so I always look at it from a local perspective. This is a great way for small clubs to actually build that of production into their actual events, to shine light on the competition that's there. Production is very critical in regards to shining light. And therefore, when you do the production, you can give KPIs to those local businesses. So therefore, they can make a qualified decision to say, hey, do I want to double down on sponsorships? Should I not sponsor this anymore? And is it not helping me? But that data is very critical for a local business to engage. And esports clubs has the greatest opportunity to really build out production for their events. And, production doesn't have to equate to a lot of money. For us, production, we have hundreds of thousands of dollars in production equipment in our facility, but you don't have to have that. Having a PC, understanding the software platforms like OBS or utilizing vMix, that is $1,200, but it's so dope and dynamic. But leveraging that software platform to do a sufficient amount of actual production is something very, very easy for that of someone to obtain, and they can actually shine a light on their esports programs. And that can be the best way that local brands and businesses can be a part of this infrastructure.
Okay, so another question. That's Fabulous answer. Thanks for lobbing that over. How often do the esports communities or different esports orgs work together like in a community?
Um,
Are they all kind of siloed and work independently?
I think one, they're trying to take care of their own organization, and probably 9 times out of 10, it is maybe a developer or a city or somebody that's kind of bringing them together. Like case in point with the Washington Justice out here, the Overwatch team.
Mhm.
Activision Blizzard has given them an opportunity to hold local activations and prep for the release of Overwatch 2. So they reached out to us as the city and all the venues, like, hey, we've got this opportunity. We love to partner with you on that. So then I offered up, our entertainment and sports arena. And like, what if we did like a block party, and kind of like a communal area, not playground, tailgate kind of area, and we had all the different esports orgs come out here. So then I was like Wizards District Gaming, the NBA 2K team. I was like, the Game Gym, the local LAN center out here, the collegiate conference that we started out here, all of those individual universities in their esports and gaming programs. And we just kind of had something like that. And then later on at night, then we go into the arena and then people would test the beta and then have the opportunity to kind of see who's the champion at the beta release. So I think a lot of times, it could be an organization like Twitch. It could be a distribution platform. It could be a developer. It could be somebody. But a lot of times, somebody is bringing these opportunities to the individual esports orgs, and they're like, "Yeah, I want to represent my community. Yeah, I want to have an impact." I do want to go back. I guess that's my MO right now. But you were kind of talking about, how does a company endear itself to the community and kind of introduce esports and like I'm a company, so that's what I'm doing, so I just kind of wanted to share, at least an approach that we're doing. And I talked upon this a little bit, at a show down the line. Atlanta does things very efficiently, but very differently from DC. Atlanta has the Georgia Economic Development Board that has incentivized rebates and stuff like that. And then they have the Atlanta Esports Alliance.
Yep.
Danny and those guys, they have the amazing stuff that Esports is doing. Then they've got the sports arena out there that's bringing a lot of events. And then they've got a lot of orgs, Optic and Envy and stuff like that. So they're doing things by kind of being at the center. LA does this in terms of where teams live, where organizations live, where the talent streamer organizations live. Here in DC, in order to build that community, I have to do it a little bit differently. And so the way that I'm doing it is I'm doing it by activating and playing or being visible on different levels. So one is on an international level. And I say that our goal is to be a top 5 domestic destination in esports and gaming. Not one, but a top 5. It's to be a top 15 international destination, and it's to stand up a local infrastructure that's second to none. So how do we get there? And I think this is how we're talking about how a company builds, and endears himself to a community. And so one of the things is activating on a global level. So I partnered with the Esports Insider because every day we either go to Esports Insider, Esports Observer, Reddit or something like that to consume our information. So I partnered with them to get us quarterly visibility there, and I sponsor the People on the Move section. Also, with the Esports Insider, I was able to secure one of their 4 educational conferences. So Esports Insider DC will be here. So and then bidding on all of the global and national, programs, League of Legends, Overwatch League, stuff like that. Also activating on a professional level, in that we are a sponsor, of the professional Overwatch and NBA 2K teams. So those teams have built-in communities. If we are a sponsor of them, we are now building into that
access
of those communities as well. Then activating on an amateur level. all of the military branches in some way, shape, or form are getting into this space, whether it's for recruiting or morale and welfare for active duty people. And all of that bubbles back to DC. So whether it's Pentagon, USO, Army, Navy, Air Force. So I am engaged in talks with them about kind of activating on that amateur kind of casual gamer kind of role. But then also on a collegiate level, like I said, we've got so many colleges and universities. We started a collegiate esports league, the Mid-Atlantic Esports Conference. We have 15 local DC, Maryland, Virginia colleges and universities participating in Rocket League, Overwatch, League of Legends. And once we get back to physical events, will be Super Smash Brothers, because we are a fighting game FGC community. But then also operating on a diversity and inclusion, we all know that is huge. So there's two kind of HBCU esports leagues, the Yard HBCU Esports Alliance and the community with Twitch. I'm checking in with those guys to sit here and do some diversity and inclusion initiatives. Amanda, I'm definitely working on some female women in gaming initiatives as well. So I want to check in with you and the Game Hers. But then also, we've got a local land center out here, the Game Gym. And so we are producing and sponsoring youth K through 12 events there. So these are the way that we are doing it. We're building on pillars so that no matter what area that you look at, you can see some activity, and so you can see it internationally, professionally, on an amateur level, on a collegiate level, on youth K through 12, on local businesses, the people who produce the people who produce CES, the big tech show, they're based here in Arlington. The people who produce National Association of Broadcasters, which half of this thing is broadcasting and streaming, they're based here in DC. So we're looking at doing off-season programming with them to stand the district up. So I think, at least from a city perspective, that's one of the ways that we are trying to do that. And I encourage every person that represents a destination, lean into who you are, lean into what works for you, and present an opportunity to the world that's specific to your destination, because esports is global by nature. It has to move around. No destination has a lock on anything. And if you present, a proposition value, you can be, one of the locations everybody comes to.
Oh, I love it. So let's talk a little bit about DEI. So Amanda, talk a little bit about, how you achieve some success and attracting females in the space, and then people of different colors and socio and economic backgrounds.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I obviously work in a nonprofit dedicated to that. So a lot of everything of what we do there is really important. But I also really try to exemplify that through my for-profit business, Tyrus. And a lot of that and a lot of what others can do is making the conscious effort to strive for diversity. Something I hear way too often is like, oh, well, that person wasn't qualified, or I can't find a qualified woman, or I can't find a qualified BIPOC person. And to me, I think that's just a little crap, to be totally honest. And there are many reasons as to why some of these different individuals didn't have the pleasure and the privilege to be able to, let's say, go to school for that degree, or to be able to have that computer to complete that training. There's so many different blockers that I think a lot of business people really forget. Like, oh, they just don't have the qualifications, and not really trying to understand why they don't. So I personally make an effort over at Tyrus. I want the diversity, and not just women, because then you just become a little cult of women, and that's not what I want either. I really want to see
inclusion means inclusion.
Exactly. So for me, I look to have that diversity, and I will train the people that maybe aren't 100% up to speed, because like me, they didn't get to go get their MBA. Not everyone has that pleasure, and so. And then on the Women in Games International side, as an actual nonprofit, all of the activities that we do are geared towards this. And I believe in 2022, we have about 25 programs that we will be executing on, which is really amazing and exciting, all geared towards how do we create this space for women, non-binary, and femme-presenting individuals, but how do we get them into these companies? And not only how do we get them into these companies, but how do we help them rise through these companies to decision-making places? Because I've had so many conversations where I'm talking to a guy who owns a company, and he's like, oh, I have women here. And I'm like, yeah, your accountant doesn't count. Like, who's in your
C-level.
C-suite?
Yeah.
Yeah. Who are your directors? Who are the people that are helping to push change and make decisions? I often bring up the esports dress that I don't know who created, but it was a bunch of men. They didn't think to bring a woman into the conversation to assist with something made for women and femme presenting individuals that want to wear a dress. So I think really just making that conscious effort to include people in the conversation. If I had an amazing conversation out here at PAX Unplugged with a white woman who wanted to make a game geared towards Chinese people. And she was like, I consciously am aware that I need to have Chinese people at my company to help advise me. It's not smart to speak on behalf of people or, a group of people that you're not actively part of.
Yeah, that's very true. And since Danny and Neil can both speak to how you actually pursued the Black and brown kids of today to help them realize that they have a path to pro, can you guys talk a little bit about some of the successes that you've had there?
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the biggest perspectives as we built our platform is now we have esports professional organizations reaching out to us for the talent that's coming through our pathways. Specifically, I think this esports industry, it's really hard in regards to really finding suitable, like I know Amanda said, like, it's like crap, but I think, it is kind of hard to find talent because it's like going to school right now and they're saying, you got to focus in on building a resume, which in our industry, you have to focus in on building a portfolio. So for us, it's like, I am a big component of building a portfolio to showcase, hey, this is what I've done, because everybody is pretty tight right now in regards to how they want to actually allocate their money. And they have to make sure that they make the best decisions because we're tight as an entity, we're pretty stretched. And so like, for me, like we've leveraged this facility to, provide, leveraged our technology to provide a 4-week program that I actually am like such an advocate for because that's how we got our start into the space. We had to actually volunteer to build our portfolio. But, the cool thing is that our 4-week program right now that we're doing, that we've been doing for 6 months now, every single month, is allowing the students to log into our technology learning management system and learn all 5 components of esports, from management, marketing, technology, competition, and production, and then taking assessments. And then on that second week, formulating them in groups of 5 where they mimic the roles of traditional organizations, where the students can mimic that of a general manager, a head coach, a marketing specialist, a production technician, and a software developer. And the cool thing is that we give them a salary cap and they fantasy draft individuals within our actual real tournaments and leagues. So it's really cool because we can host a tournament in the NBA 2K community, for example, and take the top 4 teams and fly them to our facility as we did last month. And those are the top best athletes in the NBA 2K community from a pro-am perspective. And then we can give those data points to that of the students so they can have qualified drafts, and the head coach and the general manager gets to work together to figure out which of those 20 individuals we want on our team. So these students are simulating running their own esports organization. And so these individuals that are the marketing specialists or the production technicians, they can create marketing strategies, logos, team bios, and push it onto our technology platform. And the production technician gets to work with their team to create clips and edits of the performances of the players as they go through the actual league. And the software developer has the capabilities of being able to leverage our technology platform to build their own micro website, so they can take the content from the marketing specialist, they can take the content from the production, the data from the actual head coach, and then formulate an actual presentation. So therefore, by that 4th week, they can actively be able to say, here's what I've done inside of this space. And I've run a simulated esports organization. And it was really cool because the last month when we flew those players, those top NBA 2K Pro-Am players, the NBA 2K League coaches, their teams, they flew down to our facility because they were like, wow, they got these players here. Let's go see them. And then the students who are bused into our facility on that 3rd week, they literally can be able to see a real life combine where these NBA 2K League team owners are watching these players who've been flown down here, and the students are doing their assignments around that. So they're like, wow, I'm actually embedded. And now I can go to an entity like that of FaZe, or that of 100 Thieves, or Misfits, or that of Envy. Like Adam Reimer came to our facility and was like, hey, dude, we got 10 events in the next 2022. everybody who comes to your actual program, I want to be able to provide internships to, like, because we need the support to be able to help for our actual events.
To grow.
To grow, right? So like now it's a feasible option to be able to say these students who actively have real-time skill sets, they actively can now be able to go and represent organizations from an intern or even a part-time job perspective. And that's where I feel that's very critical. And the cool thing is that they look like everybody. Like when I think of our team, our C-suite is made up of mainly women, right?
Yeah.
And our team is really structured from that of a diversity perspective. We have Asians, we have Caucasians, we have African Americans. I'm African American, but I look at it as like, if we can create a dope product, then at this moment, it should be able to say, it doesn't matter how you look. You have good skills. You should be qualified to be able to obtain positions. And really, this is esports. So it's about competing. Like you should be able to compete with the best of the best and not be limited by way of your actual gender or the way you look. And I don't think that's right.
Yeah, it's difficult because even me with Women in Exhibition, one of the things that I was trying to accomplish was panel parity. So at conferences where there's not just a group of women doing a topic, it's women who are now included in some of these topics. And it was difficult for me to get people to actually raise their hand. Yes. So now we're going to have to do one of our topics on public speaking. We're going to teach them first so that they're not raising their hand. So I think that probably similar within this community. It's like, let us teach you first so that you feel confident that you can raise your hand. Yes. Otherwise, it's going to just continue to be the same way, right? So yes. It's education first.
Yeah.
So let me some of the questions they wanted me to ask. What can communities do to support gamers facing some of these barriers?
I think I'll jump in. Right. I think and I think this kind of relates to, the previous questions as well. I think, one of the things is like, we, here in DC, we're predominantly, African-American city. So it's chocolate city. So I can't sit down here and say that our funding goes to Hispanic groups or Asian groups or something like that. Our funding goes to just groups in general. I think the biggest thing, why we have these discrepancies is access. And that we simply have not been able, the reason that, in terms of like, the people of color is that they haven't, been given access to this. So I think the biggest thing that you can do is provide access, and so one of the things that we're doing in this collegiate conference, we are encouraging, HBCU involvement. We've got 15 universities. We have a soft commitment from Coppin State in Maryland, so we want them to be involved in for the HBCU specific leagues, to where you're there and you want to participate in that. That's great. But we also want to give you an opportunity as a person, as a university, that gears more to African Americans. You can compete with predominantly white institutions as well, and so you don't have to kind of walk down this lane. You can walk down a regular lane, and just, so I think it's providing access. I think the other thing that, that we do is we have here at Events DC every summer, we have a Strive, which is kind of like our 5 mottos that we kind of live by, a Strive internship. And one of the things, we've got interns across all different disciplines, but each year that I've been here, we've had 2 esports interns each year. So the first 2 interns came from HBCUs, and one of them, Karima Winter, is now with Ryan Johnson, those guys, and works for community out there and is doing big things, and name to watch out for. This past year, we had 2 more, and one was African-American and one was Hispanic, so I'm not saying that we don't have Caucasian Americans and some of the other ones because they're marketing and their other stuff, but just providing access, providing opportunities. I think one, Danny kind of said it, I'm an African-American. It's leading by example, and being out there, and not climbing the ladder, climbing the chart, and then kind of keeping it to yourself, so to speak,
Bring your brothers with you. Yeah.
Get on panels, get on this, get on that. Allow people to see African-Americans in a different light. They're used to seeing, people that look a certain way. Get out there, be visible, allow people to see you and ask questions, and then dare to dream. And then I will last sit here and say is, I previously mentioned that there are two kind of HBCU concurrent league tracks. And one of them is the Yard HBCU Esports Alliance. Well, the executive director, Rod Chappelle, out here, he was involved in a overall STEM program that was being housed at George Mason University out here in Virginia. So I went there and spoke to people all set to, I think the first track was like junior high up to freshman, and the last one was like upperclassmen, but speak to them, let them know the path, get out there individually. It was one-on-one. And I think it was like, a couple of different tracks with like 40 kids a pop, and let them see you, and I think it's access. And then I think it's being visible. I think it's, when you can do internships. But I think it's a little bit of everything. But I do say that I want to provide an example by the walk that I walk. But I also want to sit down here, and I appreciate all the HBCU specific and African American specific. But I think when we get to a world that we want to envision in, there's no bumper rails. It's just like, you get to go there, you get to do that. And the biggest thing is there's nobody stopping you. There's nobody telling you can't. So that's what I want to do is, and like I said, the example of Coppin State coming in, participating in just a regular collegiate conference, that's what I want to see. And then I want to see him excel and do well.
Exactly. Well, one of the other questions they want me to ask before we wrap up our session is a little bit about the toxicity that happens when gaming is going on. And do you guys have any insight or any ideas of how this industry can combat the toxicity that happens during gaming?
Yeah, I love to tackle that. I'm gonna tackle it really quickly too.
Okay.
There's this term called Twitter fingers, right? Everybody should be able to know. One of the benefits right now of actively competing inside of an actual space is that one has to be face to face to one other outside of just being on the computer. And you see a lot of that cease in the actual live environment. And so that's why I really advocate that of competing inside of a space. And, that was one of the biggest things when we see actual competitors come into, when they see the person that they've been talking about online, and then they get to see them, is like, whoa, you don't see them doing as much as they would do online. And I talk to individuals I bring that example up all the time because now, if you are that person online speaking, companies are watching. And I've actually seen firsthand where companies actively go through social medias and they actively say, no, I do not want to recruit this person on my active team or my organization to work for my organization because of which one has said it can be 2 years ago or even 3 years ago. I've literally seen individuals get fired by way of something that's been pulled up from, it could be someone who did not like you and they went through your social media and they, screenshotted something that you said that you did, maybe not even intentionally. You just wasn't aware, and it really impacted another demographic. And they pulled that up and then sent it over to your boss or such, right? And then at this point now, you've lost an actual opportunity to be in a space. I've seen that time after time. So I always am very cautious, and I'm always very, very straightforward with that of individuals who, especially since we interact with a lot of individuals in high school, just literally letting them know that what your social media presence is essentially your resume, right? And it follows your currency. It's definitely your digital currency. And so I really try to give the realities to our community about what effect can toxicity have on your life and how it can be prevented. And especially when we do events in a live space, you see it die down. You see it like, all right, I see you face to face. And that's one big thing that I try to advocate for is literally understanding that it can follow you and it can stop you from having opportunities if you're toxic.
I had somebody say to me something once that I always recall, and it said, never put something in writing that you don't want to see in a deposition.
Yeah. For sure. Lie.
It's like, oh, probably should send that. Whatever. So
I always tell a lot of people that, when it comes to toxicity, the gaming industry as a whole, it used to be cool. It used to be fun and funny and cool to, use these slurs and make these comments. And I think what the industry as a whole can do is folks like the four of us here
Yeah.
we set that tone, set that standard in other business professionals that it's not cool and it's not funny. And if you are that person being toxic, you're the odd man out and not the other way around. You know, I feel like I grew up playing World of Warcraft. It was very uncool and there was a lot of toxicity around it. Now it's a cool thing to do. Everyone wants to do it. And I think everyone really making a conscious effort that as much as we get mad, we get frustrated, we want to use our Twitter fingers, as Danny puts it, that we need to set that tone for the kids, for the college level students, so that they don't see business level people that they look up to doing that same behavior.
Yeah.
I would just also sit here and say, I mean, toxicity, you know, it exists in all forms. I mean, you know, I think over this past summer, we couldn't really look in the Observer or the Insider without seeing some companies exec, you know, being sued or something like that for what unchecked toxicity looks like.
It's a bad behavior,
I do think in some regards as an industry, we are kind of taking a hard step of cleansing ourselves.
Yeah. And as soon as I see someone, like if I see someone toxic, my first thought process is privilege. It's like, I'll just look at it as like, you're privileged. Like the fact that you can be toxic. And I look at it as like, if I feel as if like I do anything wrong, I'm going to be just ousted out of the world. And I'm very privy to that. So when I see someone toxic, I'm like, you just don't care. That's privilege in my mind. And I look at being able to understand that, you know, privilege, you know, it can be damning if you don't, you know, understand your position and the impact that you have on the actual world.
Yep. Well, that looks like it concludes our hour. And I have to say, you guys are all phenomenal. I hope our audience learned a little bit because I've spoken to you all before, and I think I learned 10 times more today than before. So I think we'll say our adieus and thank you for inviting us all to be part of this amazing event. And we're here for you in the future.
Yeah.
Take care, everybody. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.